This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to this special show on the eve of 115th birth anniversary of Babu Jagjivan Ramji. The downtrodden, oppressed, and those are the ones for whose emancipation he has tried. And we sincerely, respectfully, remembering him, we are coming up with a special edition of this show, Dr. TSPR show. I am Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello. As a concerned citizen, the fear and panic out of pandemic now again leading me to so many things. Yesterday's passage of the bill, I don't know whether it will be totally signed by the Honorable President or no, I don't know. Whatever they have done with our Criminal Procedure Act, Criminal Identification Procedure Act bill passed by Parliament, is it in the best interests of the Evidence Act, wherein you are allowing a constabulary to collect all the evidences right from DNA to your semen? And that too, when the present Chief Justice, Mr. N.V. Ramana, he himself very clearly stated some months ago, stating that the police stations are the biggest human rights violations. In that context, coming from the Chief Justice of Supreme Court of India, then how could a government, without understanding, straight away rest the power in the constabulary? For even simple cases, if they can collect, even when you are suspected, without trial, without conviction, if you collect all these vital essentials of a person or a citizen, can't they be misused or misplaced for something else? Even small protest also you cannot do tomorrow, because every police station you are attached in that area. Is it a threatening for democracy? Is it democracy, autocracy, or fascism? Rule of the law, constitution, evidential act, do they prevail now after this law? Are we a people participatory constitutional democracy wherein the citizens themselves are the constitution? Or the people elected by us, because we are represented in democracy by the representatives for the assembly, right from Panchayat to Lok Sabha, are they going to do everything in their own way as they are funded? We have seen the pharmacists or whoever it is, the funding of political parties has become opaque. No NRI funding you can source, nor even electoral bonds. Now, in whose interest this? When people started questioning the pandemic, science, truth, and freedom being hijacked, now in whose interest? When they questioned vaccines, in whose interest? Is this enactment just to silence those minds? Helter-skelter allow all police stations to do, and that too, then what is the role of judiciary, courts? And the other day, the same Chief Justice N.V. Ramnaji, who has turned the police stations to be the worst human rights violations, he clearly stated about CBI, the independence of CBI. Every state police people have now they lost faith, so they come to the court and they ask for CBI probe. Now even the CBI is not in a proper shape. He says there should be an umbrella of agency under which they should work. So underneath this, both big statements coming from the Chief Justice of Supreme Court. One is police stations, human rights violations, and even the CBI, when people are not having faith in the local police and they are approaching courts for CBI probes. The CBI also, he stated, not I am not stating. When such is the case, why this law enactment? Is it in the interest of citizens of this great country? Or is it just to make their mouths shut, as they have been protesting against the mandates, COVID mandates, which doesn't have science? There is no truth. The cow blood is used in the vaccines. They don't want to speak. When Ayurveda, naturopathy, courts will scrutinize everything, but not vaccines and the medicines which are being used. When people are questioning their freedom, 2 years they lost jobs, lives, children education, and even we have seen the farmers strike, and coming on the heels, the Chief Justice statements and so many high courts like Mumbai High Court, Goa High Court, coming up with clearly defined orders wherein the liberty of a citizen is upheld. So we'll listen to Ravichandran ji, and we have Ravichandran Swaminathan ji, who is a web crime analyst, and we have another wonderful good friend personality, the cyber law advocate and DISI chairman, which he has already started long back. And that too, we are very clear: no enmity against individual, nor animosity against any party or organizations. Issue as per rule of law, Constitution invoking Evidential Act. As all the political parties, we said they have become one when it is Corona or the NRI funding or opaque electoral bonds. Now, when this being forced enacted upon the citizens of India, the opposition's role you have seen. So that is the reason why this show is of utmost importance. Yes, Ravichandran ji, I'll make you a presenter. Kindly go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Yes, sir, please. You are the presenter, sir.
Yeah, I have presented. Can you see this?
Yes. Yeah, make it full screen, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, full. So, good evening, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Reddy, for giving me this platform to talk about the Criminal Identification Procedure Act Amendment 2022. Now, if you ask a lawyer like Mr. Rajendran, he will say that self-incrimination is not permitted as per law. And forcible, if somebody uses force to make you give information, that is not admissible. For example, narco analysis. If I object to narco analysis and still the government goes ahead and does this, then the Supreme Court itself has held that it is not admissible as evidence. Under these circumstances, this Criminal Identification Procedure Act was passed in Parliament yesterday, and it has far-reaching implications. Despite that, the total number of members who were present in Parliament when this amendment was being discussed and passed was only 250. Even the Home Minister was not present in the Parliament when this law was being passed. Is the Parliament just a rubber stamp? Or is it a place where discussions have to be made? Because this particular act has got far-reaching implications because it touches the fundamental rights of every person in this country. After going through the act, I was shocked. Is this a Criminal Identification Procedure Act or a Citizen Identification Procedure Act? And I have got my own opinion about this. Maybe Mr. Rajendran can throw some more light upon this. The original act we had was the 1920 Act. According to the 1920 Act, fingerprints, footprints, footprint impressions, photographs were permitted to be taken. And this was supposed to be taken from convicts who have got 1 year or more of conviction. That was the rule then. Less than that, it was not generally taken. I am talking 1920 Act is a British Act. Even the Britishers did not go to this extent. When the Home Minister was talking about this act, I think day before yesterday, he was saying that since technology has increased, since technology has progressed to such an extent, now these things are required, these things have become essential. Is the amendment just because technology has improved, or is the amendment for collecting information about citizens? That is the question. Now, what are the changes that has been proposed in the 2022 Act? It says that fingerprints, footprint impressions, photographs, biological samples. Biological samples has not been defined. It has been left open. However, for the purpose of elucidation, I am saying that biological samples right now consist of DNA, semen, iris, hair samples, and analysis of all these samples. The second thing is behavioral attributes from signatures, handwriting, etc. And this also includes profiling through the handwritings. And third, examinations under section 53 and 53 of CRPC, which includes analysis of blood, semen, hair samples, swabs, and DNA profiling. The issue here is the issue here is now very simple. At what what happens is, when I do a hair sampling or a DNA sampling, my medical records are also implanted on that, which means my medical records have also now become public, because all this information is going to be stored on the NCRB, and they are going to be stored for a period of 75 years. It is going to be stored for a period of 75 years. Main thing is, NCRB is open to the open for viewing by every police officer, which means all this information that is being uploaded on that NCRB is open for everybody to see. How is it safe? That is my first question. Then the second question is, even a convict has got dignity. This is in direct violation of the right to privacy judgment given by the Supreme Court under the Justice Puttaswamy case. What is required for the identification of a person? You have to have fingerprints, fine. You have to have footprints, fine. You have to have photographs, fine. But what is being taken is going beyond the identification of the person. Now, examination of behavioral and attributes and profiling, what you are going to do effectively is typecast the person. And in case he is reformed also, because he has been already typecast under this behavioral attributes, rehabilitating him in society will be a big problem. And once the biological samples are collected, DNA, swabs, semen, saliva, to put it very delicately, this can be used to frame a person also, because we have come across cases. Mr. Rajendran, as a lawyer of crime, he will endorse my statement if I say that evidences have been planted, can be planted, and they have been planted also in several cases. I am not able to move this thing. Yes. The second slide is not coming. I am not able to get the second slide moving.
You are into the second slide. Now you just go for escape, then you go for the second slide.
No, the second slide is not moving in my screen. Is it moved in your screen?
Yeah, I'll just try to.
He's a presenter. He will be able to do it, I think.
Yeah, I'll try to. So that you can come speak.
I can continue. Yes, you can go to the second slide.
Yeah, I'm going there.
Yes. And now, who
One
are the
second.
persons?
Yeah.
Handcuffing democracy.
Now, who are the persons from whom this information can be collected? It is convicted or according to the original act, it was for convicted or offenses with more than 1 year of imprisonment. Then the second thing was persons who are ordered to give security for good behavior in public. That was the second reason. And the magistrate could order if the any arrested person. See, the magistrate could order collection of these fingerprints or footprint impressions or photographs from any person who is been arrested, and it was to aid the criminal investigation. Now, in this new act, if it is convicted or arrested for any offense, the time limit has not been mentioned, which means if a person is arrested for breaking a traffic law, for driving rash and negligent driving, which carries a punishment of 6 months, then his bio samples can be taken, and it can be taken forcibly. This particular amendment permits that. If the magistrate orders the taking of bio samples of a traffic violator, he cannot refuse. If a person is arrested for violating section 144, biological samples can be taken. This is ridiculous. This has become ridiculous now. Or in other words, and there's another issue also. Now, suppose I am arrested for, say, violating section 144, and my bio samples are supposed to be taken. Now, suppose I refuse to take it. Suppose I refuse to offer my bio samples for testing, then that becomes a crime. So, even if I am discharged in the first offense of section 144 or rash and negligent driving, even if I am acquitted of that crime, still I am, because I have refused to give my bio samples, which has become a crime. Now I will be tried under this act, and my bio samples can be forcibly calculated. This is becoming ridiculous now. A policeman can just haul me up for some crime and ask me for my bio samples. If I refuse to give it, that becomes a crime, and the first crime can be discarded. I can be prosecuted for the second crime of refusing to give my bio samples. Essentially, this is what has happened now, which means any citizen can be taken. Any citizen can be taken for that. Now, Mr. Rajendran will say that forcible taking of samples or self-incrimination is a crime. Now, what is this? You are forcibly taking my bio samples. The law is permitting it now. Or for so many years, the constitution which was protecting me for self-incrimination, now that has gone out of the window. And such an important bill, only 250 members have discussed it in Parliament. Remember that. Now, narco tests will become illegal. Lie detector tests will become legal. This is against the Supreme Court ruling. Still more peculiar cases, even if a person is not arrested or if he is not associated with the crime or the investigation, he can also be forced to give the details or samples on the excuse that it will aid the investigation. And who is to determine whether it is going to aid the investigation or not? It is the head constable in the police station, because he has been given the powers to ask for samples. So tomorrow, if there is a crime in Hyderabad, the head constable can very well come and say, Dr. Reddy, please give your sample. You are not involved in the crime, you are not been arrested, you are not part of the crime also, still your samples may aid investigation. That is the only excuse. How is this, how can this stand the scrutiny of the law? Now, this thing will now go against the Data Privacy Act. Data Privacy Act, we were objecting to the Data Privacy Act because Section 35 of that Act was giving enormous powers to the government to collect data. Now, even that small fig leaf which the government was using to protect itself, now even that has been thrown away. Now the government says that I can take the data whenever I want, from whomever I want, and I can retain it for 75 years. Now, if a DNA sample is taken for 75 years, there is another implication which very few people have not noticed. This DNA will point out to my descendants also.
Yeah.
So are you going to retain it for 75 years, or you are going to just change the name from my name to my son's name or my daughter's name and keep it for another 75 years? There is no word on that in the law. So how is this going to help? See, the preamble of the Constitution very clearly says that I have got a right to live in liberty and in dignity. What happens to my dignity if I'm just picked up on the street and says that you give me your biosamples? And how do I know that this, whatever samples I give today, will not be planted as evidence somewhere and I will be made a criminal? These are the implications of that. Can you go to the next slide, please? Now, original act says that the investigating officer in charge of the police station of a rank sub-inspector or above, or the magistrate. In this, it is head constable or above. Even a head warden of a prison can ask for these details. Executive magistrates have been empowered to collect these samples, to request for collection of these samples, because they have to maintain good behavior or peace. That which means every IAS and IPS officer can direct the collection of the data, in addition to your judicial magistrate. Or in other words, the bureaucracy in the government have now been empowered to collect this data without any judicial oversight.
It's
you
ridiculous.
are putting so much of power, empowering IAS, IPS officers to collect this data without any accountability. Without any accountability.
It's
How
ridiculous.
is this valid? Yeah? Can we go to the next slide, please? The next slide. This is over. This is over. I think you're going back. So where are we heading? Are we heading towards a fascist state? There was an assurance in the Constitution that we will be permitted, that we, the people of India, have formed this Constitution to enable us live in dignity. Now, what happened to that assurance? It has gone out of the window. This amendment to this act is in direct violation of Article 14, Article 19, and Article 21 of the Constitution, because it impinges on the equality, it impinges on my fundamental rights, and it impinges on my life with liberty or dignity. Now, the Data Protection Act has not been passed yet, but this act has effectively made it impotent. It has emasculated that act, because it has given so much of powers to the government to collect the data. Now, this act is in contravention of the Supreme Court judgment on right to privacy given in the Justice Puttaswamy case. Or in other words, it has overruled the Supreme Court. And in all these things, over the last few period, as Dr. Reddy was saying, right from the beginning of pandemic or COVID or something, our fundamental rights are being incrementally diluted, step by step. Incrementally, it is being diluted. And the unfortunate thing is, such an important legislation, only 250 people have voted on it. 180 have voted for it, and about 58 or 60 have voted against it. That's all. It is implying that it is almost a constitutional amendment now. Because the fundamental of the constitution is I cannot be permitted to incriminate myself. Now that has been overruled. People, unless people start voicing their opinion on this, I think the way this government is now bringing in such laws, it will be difficult for a citizen to. We are almost becoming more and more like Chinese surveillance. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Mr. Rajendran, you can elaborate on what I have given.
I'll just try to go through your slides one by one, so that in effect the demand of the people. Are we heading towards a fascist state? Empowering the non-accountable will lead to abuse of the power. See, head constable SIs, they are not properly trained, and you are putting them under that. Not only that, IAS IPS officer, now there was a demand to do away with this culture of IAS IPS. Now you are trying to empower them. Is it the majority government which he has been stating? Traditional government of traditional people being represented here? What is this going on? And handcuffing democracy, very clearly stated. How can you collect my samples without undergoing a trial? A simple constabulary, and even those who are not connected with the case saying that this will aid my this thing, and you are collecting all the samples, preserving it for 75 years. As you rightly said, tomorrow with my family name, even the children can be accused of. And what is Parliament doing? Is Parliament putting itself for trial? And that too, who are you? You are my representative. Without my knowledge, how are you trying to impose these things on me? As you have done with Corona, people have come out in large numbers. Now, fearing that truth will come out, are you doing all this? That is why I was pointing to Chief Justice N.V. Ramnaji's statements that police stations have become worst human rights violations. Not all police stations, I would say, because there are wonderful police officers who have been coming to the rescue of the people, constabulary to IPS officers. But of most people are still fearful to go to the police stations. Why? It has become a movie-like pattern. Now, day before yesterday, it came out clearly stating that people having lost faith in the local state police, they approach courts and insist for CBI probe. Now, even this CBI should function independently. Is it doing so? In majority of cases, it is not. That is what he stated. So he said we should have an umbrella of some dash dash. On the heel of this, now this is a big amendment. Will this stay? The scrutiny of President and the Supreme Courts, that is a big thing, because whether we want to be a democracy or a fascist regime like China, the people have to decide whether we want a people participatory constitutional democracy or a Chinese-like dictatorial in the name of democracy being funded by these pharmacies or insurance or corporates who do not want people to question them. They want to enslave at the cost of fundamental rights of the people. Are we in people participatory constitutional democracy? Yes, Rajendranji, kindly go through. You switch on your audio, sir, please.
Sorry. Okay, thank you, Ravi, for the wonderful opportunity. I mean, for the nice presentation. Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for the good opportunity. Mr. Ravichandran's presentation was very good, very brief to the point. I would rather say that his presentation was full of concerns and worries that is expected of a common citizen. Absolutely full of concerns and worries. But I am not compelled to recall something what happened immediately when the IT Amendment Act 2008 came. It was notified in 2009 January. When the act immediately came, when the act was notified, there were some sections which were called to be draconian. The press during those days, they used section 69, 69A and 70B, which gave powers to certain Computer Emergency Response Team India, the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, which comes under the umbrella, under the management organization of Department of Electronics, under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The department had the powers to um, uh, uh, monitor, intercept, and block in 3 stages. Monitor, intercept, and block uh, internet. So those powers, that particular section was considered to be very draconian, and people said everybody is going to rush to Supreme Court that these sections are draconian, they should be done away with. The government cannot have the power. And subsequently, many sections in that Amendment Act was actually questioned by the citizen, and cases went up to Supreme Court. But Supreme Court, in all its wisdom, finally struck down only one particular amendment, namely the 66A of the amendment. Even that amendment, when Supreme Court struck it was not properly defended by the government of India, and thanks largely to the misinterpreting or misunderstanding of the section only, it was actually struck down. So similarly, whenever any act, anything comes vesting with the government some higher powers than what is existing, there is bound to be some concern, some worries among concerned citizens that this will be misused. Government should not have such power. It's quite understandable. What I'm trying to tell you is that I do not fully justify that the government has taken so much powers in its ambit. I'm only trying to say that let us wait for the passing of the act. Let us wait for how the police use or misuse or abuse or even underuse or overuse, whatever. In all these 5 aspects of usage, I'm telling you, it could be use or overuse or underuse or misuse or abuse. Then it is for the courts to interpret. It is for the court to interpret that such a high amount of powers should not have been vested in the government. Already we do have a very strong privacy interpretation by the Supreme Court when it interpreted in the famous Pattaswamy case that privacy is a fundamental right. So if it is felt that this particular amendment, this particular new act is going to be an infringement of the privacy of individuals, I'm pretty sure that Supreme Court is going to come down heavily on this and is going to strike down. So there are some inbuilt safety mechanisms, safety valve built in it, subject to interpretation, subject to the presentation, and again, Constitution itself provides the safety valve to citizens that nobody can be compelled to give an evidence against himself. That particular thing has not been specifically struck down. This section is not a notwithstanding section. Whatever any act in any other section, this particular act will overimpose. In that act, this section is not an over or a superimposing act. This section is going to be an independent act like any other act. So it is up to the court to interpret, up to the police to use it. So let us wait for it. And one more thing, I want to address the concern expressed by Ravichandran is that the SIs and inspectors have certainly been given powers. But the fear expressed or the normal allegation which is cast on many police officials that they throw the narcotics or the samples in a particular house and a car or somebody, when they want to implicate somebody, they deliberately plant the evidence until they bring him. This accusation was there anyway. Even without this act, this accusation, this allegation has always existed. So that is continuing to exist. Whatever it existed in a human form in the case of narcotics and ganjas and those kind of things is going to continue now after the passing of this act in the case of digital evidence or biometric and all that also. That is certainly going to be there. So let us wait. Let us wait how the act takes shape, how the police are going to use it, and how.
I'll ask you one thing. As an advocate, you want the judiciary or the legal trial to be bypassed in the name of constabulary, IAS, IPS officers issuing orders. See, it is like that. You are trying to already precast the judgments. You are trying to influence the judgment. Now, how do you think the judiciary will be very independent after all this? I'm asking you straight. You want judiciary to go for trial or you want
Yes.
constabulary to IAS, IPS officers to do the trial?
See, police are anyway going to do their duty. Just because the police is filing a case
No,
against
no,
you,
I'm straight to you.
does not
No, no, sir,
mean
sir,
that
sir.
police
Let me be
is
very clear. Police
no,
is police is
every
very clearly
no,
defined
no.
to maintain. Police is
Okay,
very clearly defined to maintain law and order. And after the registration of the case, should charge sheet and they should present it to the court for trial. Now the
correct.
court is the one just to see that the trial, as he rightly said, accused or convicts, along with the petitioners, the sufferers, everyone has got their fundamental rights or justice should be done, and in a transparent and accountable way. The trial should
Okay.
be very clear, and it clearly states also in our own jurisprudence, as you say, let 99 dash dash go unpunished, but one innocent should not be punished.
Correct, sir. Absolutely true. Sir, I'm not disputing all these things. I'm telling you, already the CRPC 1973 or the Indian Evidence or even the Banker's Evidence Act, everything, particularly the Indian Evidence Act and the CRPC, they do have so many safety mechanisms. For example, we have section 313 in CRPC, section
Let us not go into that, sir. Now let us yes, you said
everything with
safety
that.
mechanism.
No. It says this.
Self
For the purpose of
incrimination is not there
enabling the
in this
accused.
law. No, in this law, I'm trying to decipher it because you are a seasoned and highly intellectual, because you know how to decipher it for common people. Now the incrimination. Now there is nothing is there in my hands now. You have made me, you have bade me all. That means, like China, you are going to make me to sit, or Russia, where you don't have proper fundamental rights. You are taking away all the fundamental rights. India, is it going to be a democracy or a fascist rule by such dash 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 of daishism? Now I am asking you straight. Do you want trial to be done by
You say the
judiciary,
words like,
or
sir, you say the words like
then I'm trying to be
fascism
very
or
clear.
comparing it with
See, we
China,
have seen
Russia,
corona, sir. We have seen corona. We have seen corona
the
pandemic.
expression of
We have seen corona pandemic. Where is the science? Where is the truth? And who is issuing orders?
these are all expression of one's emotion against the government. I'm not
No. We
going
are
into
speaking.
this, what happened in Corona or what.
truth, sir. Truth.
See,
I am
I'm
asking you
not,
straight away.
I'm not
Is
trying to
there
comment
cow
on the
blood?
emotional
Vaccine is
expression.
there or not? Why are you not trying to come out and clean? Why courts are also not deciphering it? Now, my straight question to you:
Can I intervene?
I'm not
only one
trying to
question?
comment on.
Should
I'm not trying
judiciary
to
do the
comment on
trial,
what
or
happened in the case, what happened in
should
the case of
judiciary do
Corona.
the trial? Rajendra ji, should judiciary do the trial, or you want innocents, I say, constabulary or SIs, because they are not adequately trained? Tomorrow you make them scapegoats. You want constabulary SIs, or you want IAS IPS officers to determine, to collect all those vital evidences. When will you collect these evidences? After you undergo all the trial in the judicial courts and all, after your conviction. But beforehand, if you are collecting all these things before even in the accused stage, don't you think, and after collecting all such evidences, tomorrow, what is the guarantee that you are not going to be misused? And where is the need for you to collect when the technology you are saying has improved so much? With such a technological revolution, how is that our investigation officers not able to crack any case? With due sympathies to them, yes, criminals have become more and more assertive, and more, a dash support they are getting. How do you look at this scenario from a common man's view? That is what I am trying to ask you. It's not emotion. I'm asking you straight. My fundamental right is being harped upon. You mean to say emotion? How can this be an emotion?
Now, can I intervene?
Yes, sir, please.
See, now 2-3 concerns that Mr. Rajendran was talking about. Number 166A. I was one of the very few persons who was vociferously objecting to the Supreme Court throwing out 66A. And 66A was thrown out because it was being misused by the police people. That was the reason that it was given. 66A was thrown out because it was misused by the police people. From 2008 to 2015, that is all, it took almost 8 years for this particular section to be thrown out. Today, you have several sections like your Sedition Act or your act which says inciting of disharmony between communities, spoiling the harmony between communities. These sections of the IPC are being misused by the police also. They are still on the statute book. People are still being arrested for that purpose. For example, I'll just give you one small example. One gentleman was arrested and booked under the Gundas Act in Tamil Nadu. He has come out of almost 1 year of imprisonment, and the court said that there is nothing against him. Now, an innocent man has been arrested, placed in jail for 1 year, and after this act, after this amendment, the day he is arrested, he would have been forced to give all his biological samples. And it was a political arrest. It was a political arrest. Now, if he has given his biological samples, what will prevent the same police from planting this evidence in some other more heinous crime? After all, they're taking samples of his semen, DNA, saliva, etc., etc. So what will prevent them from putting it in some other place and saying that he has committed that crime and book him under that and throw away the keys? So what happens to you? One innocent person, for one innocent person, you are going to free 99 guilty persons. But here is a case where I'm saying for 99 innocent persons, you are going to put these persons in behind bars. How is that acceptable? Okay. Second thing, yes, the courts will decide. When? It has taken more than 30 years for Lalu Prasad Yadav to be convicted in a bribery case. And in that 30 years, what will happen? How many people's samples will the NCRB collect? It is like closing the door after the horses have run away. Not only the horses have run away, they have had ponies, and those ponies would have also died by that time. Then only you are going to lock the gate. How do I trust the judiciary when it takes 30 years to complete a case? And what happens if you have a police commissioner like Parambir Singh or Sachin Vase? So today, if this act was there about 6 months earlier, Parambir Singh would have simply taken Arnab Goswami's biosamples and fixed him in some other way. And to correct that, the judiciary would have to become, and after 20-25 years, Arnab Goswami would say, okay, you are acquitted. Tell me, how is this, how do you say that this is justice? Is this justice, or is this just a banana republic? Or I think even our Kap Panchayats will give better justice than this. As a citizen, and after going through so many cases, let me tell it to you on your panel. There is contempt for the court. There is contempt for the court.
Yes.
Because that is the way even the courts are functioning. Justice Lodha, I can give you so many instances. When a Supreme Court judge comes out and says, uncle judges and brother lawyers, in the Allahabad Provident Fund case, two Supreme Court judges have, one Supreme Court judge has been indicted for sexual harassment. One Supreme Court justice has been indicted for encroachment of land. What trust can I have in the judiciary? And you are empowering everybody to give my samples. It is we, the people, who have to decide who is to take my sample or not to take my sample. What happens to my dignity? And the question is, why should the government retain it for 75 years? Even a convict who has been sentenced to death has got the right to die in dignity. You can't just hang him and throw him to the dogs. That is North Korean way of doing justice. We are supposed to have a constitution. We are supposed to be under the constitution. Even a convict who has been sentenced to death has got a right to die in dignity. Now, where is the dignity now? That is my question. Yes, judiciary will come in, somebody will file a public interest litigation, and will the judiciary wait till this entire act is misused and 10, 20,000 people are put into jail and taken these swabs?
Yes, Rajendran ji, please.
Sir, as I told you about 10, 15 minutes earlier, my stand is almost the same, what I said earlier. It is for the judiciary to interpret, because whenever any new amendment like this comes, we always say that it is draconian. Government has been vested with enormous powers. Government does not need so much powers. Police do not need so much powers. Police is bound to misinterpret or misuse. All these criticisms are bound to be there. And unfortunately, the track record in the past few years, track record of the police or the judiciary and some of the judicial officers, even at the the highest level, also the track record. I mean, it also justifies such concerns expressed. I'm not denying it. But in democracy, all these things are bound to happen. Then what else do you expect from the government if you do not want to vest the government with powers? See, when some terrorists are repeatedly attacking, when somebody goes scot-free, somebody is escaping, or some terrorists coming under the garb of some Kisan agitation or a price rise agitation, or the CA agitation, some big gang is coming. Somebody is funding him, foreign funding, everything is there, and government wants some powers to know who is behind it. So the facial recognition software or the biometric software, all these things will certainly be very handy, because even recently Delhi government also used the facial recognition software, which is certainly objected to by the uh, uh, privacy supporters. The privacy supporters said that when I'm walking on the road, how can the government take my facial recognition and then use it if I'm participating in CAA or any such stuff? But the government worth its name, government worth its salt, is certainly is expected to do it. And if you don't exercise that powers, again the same person will criticize. So many people have come to the street. So many people are blocking the traffic. The traffic hold up. So much bad things are happening. So much chaos is prevailing. It's a chaotic government. What is the government is doing? Government does nothing there. Government is going to support, encourage all this stuff. The same criticism will come. So to thwart that attempt, government certainly needs some powers like this. So facial recognition software or the biometric enabled criminal identification, or at least accused identification, some such thing is could be there, so that it puts in the minds of the protesters some amount of fear that if I participate, my biodata is ready with the government. Government will be able to trace me. So this kind of thing certainly expected of any democracy. You only have
You mean to say
to
this is
go
democracy?
for the checks and balances.
This is democracy.
Here,
You mean to say this is
check and
democracy or
balance
autocracy?
how it is based.
Yes, Rajendran ji.
Can I intervene? What you said was correct.
Yes, sir.
What Mr. Rajendran says is correct. So, best is, see, I don't know if you have read 1984, George Orwell's 1984. This is what the book also says. This is what the book also says. No dictator will say that I'm doing this for my benefit. Every dictator will say, this is for your benefit. This is for your well-being. It is to keep yourself safe. I request you to kindly see that movie, V for Vendetta or something like that. You see the dictator, what he says? This is what Hitler also said. This is what Mussolini also said. I am doing it for the public, this thing. Untrammeled powers. I am talking about untrammeled powers. I am talking about overarching, overreached powers. This is a problem. I would rather live with somebody robbing my house than give the government all the powers to take all my data, and the government will rob my house. That is the only difference. How is this? I am surprised that when you say that the government requires these powers, aren't these powers enough? Aren't the powers that are available with the government enough? And why should, yes, now coming back to your point, if you want my biosamples, why do you want my biosamples? That is the fundamental question. The fundamental answer to that is, I have some biosamples as evidence. I want to compare it with the suspect or the person who has been accused, so I take his samples. But why should a third person who is not connected with the crime be asked to give his samples? Now this law permits that. This is an untrammeled power. How do you say that the government is using, putting someone on the road and taking his biosamples who is not even connected with the crime?
That too without the trial going, without the trial establishing that
And
whether you are a
what-
convict or.
And what happens after I am acquitted? The data still remains with the government for 75 years. How is
Now,
that
the way
acceptable?
government's controlling, now the way government's controlling right from top to bottom, you think there will be a fast trial and a clear trial wherein equal justice can be done? And what, even if you are acquitted, because they have samples, they can plant you there. And in another case, sensing that they will be targeted tomorrow. See, if for Rajendran Sheikh, for the sake of Rajendranji's sake, will let us understand. Tomorrow, if they are acquitted after the, but before acquitted, once they come to know they are being acquitted, you think the same IAS officer or police constables are, they'll keep quiet? Because everything will fall on them tomorrow. They may have to pay huge damages or something like that. What will they do? They may implant you again. These are so many things which are there in the common. And then you are saying it is for the people. Who asked you? We have been asking, what does corona vaccine contain? Does it contain cow blood or not? You are not able to say anything. And we are asking you, why do you need these lockdowns? Then why I'm trying to give you an example. You don't want to answer, and there is no debate on the floor of assembly or parliament. And you are not allowing panchayats, municipalities to function with freedom. You want to usurp all the powers. Now see, because of farmer strike, now people are coming out on the roads to know what has happened last 2 years. Now they are questioning every other aspect. This mahangai, it has become very costly now to live life. Essential commodities have gone skyrocketing. And if someone is trying to force you up to do something illegally, if you try to protest tomorrow, same police will say, you have collected your samples. If you do this story or if you come onto the road, we are going to plant you. Your fundamental rights are curbed. And who are you to curb my rights? That is the basic question. Who are you? You are just my representative. Who has given you power? Yes, sir. Rajendranji, finish it off.
I don't have anything more to say. Whatever I felt, my feeling, I already told you. I'm just
You are most welcome. You are most welcome to hear your opinion. Yes, terrorists, antisocial elements, we are concerned. I'm doing this show from the old city. Yes, we should be ruthless with them, but they're also law of the land should
I
prevail.
don't have anything more
I
to
gave you
add to
example of
what I said earlier.
Pakistani Kazab, Pakistani that Kazab terrorist, he was put in high-fried air conditioned this thing. How much amount was spent? You got an advocate to argue, attorney to argue on behalf of him. When you are providing all that to a Kazab who has been caught, how is that you are trying to trample the rights of your own citizens this way? That is my question. Yes, sir. Please finish it.
The point is very simple. The point is very simple. Evidence requires to be collected, but there must be checks and balances. If there are no checks and balances, then it is always going to be an issue. People, there must be a sense of accountability. Even in the case of wiretapping of communication systems, even in the case of wiretapping systems, it was discussed on the floor of the parliament, and only the home secretary was permitted to issue the orders, not the constable. So there must be checks and balances. That checks and balances have been removed in this. That is an issue.
Yeah. Even Pegasus, last 1 week and all, Our channels have been put to all hacking. We are losing important information. Whom to complain then? Can a democracy run like this? There should be evidence to punish you. And modern technology entitles you to collect more and more evidences now. And then judicial trial also, as rightly pointed out, it should be on a fast track. It should not take ages. Yes, Rajendranji, your last word.
I think he's left.
Rajendranji.
No, he's not there.
I think there is some technical. Yeah, Rajendranji, yes. Your last word, sir. We will wind up.
Okay. In fact, I have always been an irresistible optimist, I would say. So whatever happens good for the country, happens good for the people, I would say. So from that angle, perhaps the concerns expressed by Ravichandran are all quite understandable. But let me again tell you that this is a bit scary, if not fearful, I would say slightly scary. There are provisions in the proposals, provisions in the draft, which is to be passed as an act. There are some provisions which are actually scaring the people. So let us hope that in the days to come, more of interpretation from the judiciary and very reasonable and logical and reasonable use by the police will put a law and order in place. With that, let me wait. Thank you. Thanks for that.
The act has been passed. The act has been passed. It is not a draft bill.
Not right. It has been passed. Thank you. Yeah, right. True. Thank you.
It has been passed by a majority of 180 votes. 180 votes to 60 votes.
In a parliament of 542, and then you have Rajya Sabha, and you have not involved panchayats, gram panchayats, municipalities, municipal corporations, assemblies. You are not involved anyone. Nowhere discussion takes for such an important policy when it concerns the entire country. Your last comment, Mr. Ravichandranji, before I wind up.
The issue is, yes, Mr. Rajendran is an incurable optimist. I am right now I am an incurable pessimist. We are diametrically opposite to each other. And unfortunately, as a pessimist, I have to say that several times, whatever I have said comes to pass. I don't trust, right now, I don't trust anybody with technology, particularly the governments. The government has now taken overriding powers to monitor anybody and everybody. That is scary.
Government has taken powers to monitor everybody and anytime. This is not people participatory constitutional democracy who has given you, who has elected you to run the government, whether it is welfare or development, in a transparent and accountable way, not to pass legislations 180 to 60 or 58 in a house of 542, and Rajya Sabha is there, and from panchayat to Lok Sabha, the discussion should have been taken place. This should have gone to the people, whether they need such a type of draconian legislation we call, and everyone is just, that's what Ravichandranji has presented. Eternal optimist, Mr. Rajendran says, we have to wait, but the Lok Sabha has passed without any proper this thing. And my only thing is, we have been vouching that there should not be alternative mechanisms when it comes to constitutional structure. Judiciary should do its own role. We have been saying, why should collector have a magisterial powers? Why MRO or anyone should have magisterial powers? Then why should you have a judiciary at taluk level, district level? And then why should you have a civil court and high courts? And why should you have a Supreme Court for that matter? You are trying to trample upon the powers of judiciary. We wanted all the power rested with non-judiciary officials to be taken away, so that you fast track judiciary, you go for regular appointments, and the fair trial should be there, and let police concentrate on law and order and what they are supposed to do. And tomorrow, yes, if something goes wrong, we will eternally blame again. See, this police not acted, this minister not acted, this government not acted. This we will say. But if you want to put a full stop, see that the delegation of powers is properly done. And why should you give a district, I am an IAS officer, district magisterial power, which chief secretary doesn't have? The chief secretary of the state will not have such magisterial powers. Why are you giving it to a district collectorate?
When you have a district judge, right from taluk level to district, you have judiciary. And at high court level, you have again high court. And then you have civil courts and various other courts of late you have seen. And again, economic crimes, you have separate courts, NCLTs and all. When such a structure is existing, why are you confusing democracy and why are you confusing people? What a collector has to do, let him do. And we wanted to do away this IAS, IPS because so much of investment is going on into that. And at what cost? They are becoming political tools. That is what they themselves are coming out and stating. And some are happy, some are not happy. But people at large should be happy with this system. Is this happening? So the delegation of powers should be very clearly defined when it comes to judiciary or whether it comes to the executive level. And the polity who are the lawmakers, who are the representatives of the people, right from Panchayat to Lok Sabha, they should be working in the welfare and interest of people, citizens of this country only, not those who are funding. And when people started to question you whether it is farms laws, corona mandates, when they are questioning you cryptocurrency, now when they are questioning you about the high price rise and everything, and when they are questioning you how is that NRI funding or electoral bonds have become opaque, I cannot source who is funding, which company is funding which party. When I am questioning that, how are you trying to use parliament and you give powers helter-skelter right from constabulary to IAS, IPS? Then what is the role of judiciary? What is the role of judiciary? Equijustice, the social justice. That is the reason why we have taken up this issue on this day, on the 115th birth anniversary of Babu Jagjivan Ramji, the social justice plank. If it has to remain as our Constituent Assembly for Constitution very clearly defined that it is fundamental rights and equijustice, and you, as IT said in the preamble also, my liberty, my fraternity, what to say? I only hope better sense will prevail on the Rajya Sabha. It is an elite Rajya Sabha, and I have confidence that representatives will discuss there. And I only hope the president also will not give a consent or will give a nod to this, or for that matter, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice himself has expressed so many things against police stations being violation of human rights. And the other day also he was talking about CBI, because when people lose faith in state police in the name of political insinuations or political support, when they are being framed, they go to court and demand for CBI. But even when CBI is not coming up to that level, he said there should be an umbrella of this thing. When such is the state, this amendment of criminal procedure of 1920, is it in the interest of arresting crime, prevention of crime, or enslaving all the citizens once for all, moving from democracy to dictatorship? Thank you, gentlemen. Very kind of you. Take care. Bye. We say Satyameva Jayate. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Right.